Hey everyone, what you're about to watch is the most valuable segments from my weekly Q&A, where new and experienced recruiters get together to ask questions and solve problems. If you want to join the next one, just click on the link in the description to join. It's completely free. You don't need to give me your email address, telephone number, or anything like that. And I'll personally be there to answer any of your questions. Oh, and I've also put together this recruitment starter pack for those in the beginning of their journey, which tells you exactly how to get your first client. You can grab that once you're in our community for free as well. All right, then let's get back into the video.
I did have another question, and that's on margins. If you're sending out candidates, say for if it's a doctor or you're sending out someone in the NHS on a daily or weekly basis, what do you recommend in terms of markups and margins, or is that
Okay.
something which you
So
set
I'm
yourself?
assuming you're doing contracting, right?
Yeah, if we look at the contracting as one part of the business, so you got your permanent roles which you obviously place. When it comes to contracting and say it's a weekly contract or it's a certain number of shifts, what's the best way to work out a suitable margin? Is that based on your costs, or is that based on industry, or what's that based on?
A bit of both, Hamza. So when it comes to margins, of course, you've got industry standards where you can't take them. For example, if an average doctor you charge £90 an hour and you pay an average doctor about £80 an hour, and a client calls you and says, I'm looking for a doctor, how much will you charge me? And you're like, I'll charge you £250. It's not going to go anywhere. So yeah, there has to be a level of industry standard. But at the same time as well, it really depends on how good of a negotiator you are, and depends on your sales tactic as well. So there is no right or wrong answer in terms of how much you can charge and how much you can make and sort of the margins that you can make. But it's just all has to be within reason. And also you can give yourself some sort of guideline, or I guess a guide that you want to stick to. So for example, our company and also the companies I used to work for previously, we used to go for about lower end, about £10 an hour margin. And of course, there's no higher end, as in there's no cap how high you can go. No one will say to you, why are you going about £15 margin? So yeah, our typical margins were between £10 to £15 an hour.
Okay, and that's on top of what the doctor will get.
Yeah. So for example, the doctor was getting £100 an hour. We were charging the practices £115 an hour, and we were pocketing £15 for every hour the doctor was working.
Okay. And again, when it comes to things like medical recruitment for doctors, dentists, whatever, locums, say pharmacists, is there anything we have to be aware of in terms of like when we're doing all their checks and when we're onboarding them, like things like GMC registration, GDC registration, DBS? Is that quite a stringent process when it comes to placing people in the NHS?
It's essential.
Do we have to be quite thorough with all the checks, or is there a guideline or checklist that we have to adhere to?
You've muted yourself, Hamza.
Is there a guideline or checklist that we have to adhere to?
Yeah, I'll answer that, Yusuf. So NHS, obviously, because of the industry it is, it's very quite strict in terms of checks. You know, it's for permanent recruitment, there's no checks. All you got to do for permanent recruitment is basically say, do you have UK right to work? That's about it. And then it's experience, you can put someone forward. But if it's temporary workers, whether it's 1 day a week, a month contract, a 3-month contract, you're responsible for that individual. So one of the things you would have is insurance firstly, and you are promising the client that all the checks have been done thoroughly by you. So this would start from your right to work, your references, your DBS, your mandatory training, your indemnity insurance. You have to do all those checks. Even if it means that someone wants someone in GP surgery 1 day on a temporary basis, all those checks have to be done by you. The thing about GP surgeries is primary care is slightly different, the checks, but if you're doing secondary care like hospitals, those are on frameworks, so that they have a framework, what's known as a framework standard. So it's essential to meet everything in the framework standard. And the thing is, if you start sending people that are not relevant or etc., then it just messes your reputation up. So you have to be very careful and do everything thorough, even if it's for 1 day, literally 1 day of work.
Thank you, Asad, for that.
That's right.
Yeah. So also with regards to compliance, and of course it's essential. It's very essential that you do all the right checks, and you want to mitigate as much liabilities off your back, and that you've done all your checks. And generally speaking, with regards to a checklist, your client will tell you what checklist they need. For example, a GP practice will say to you, for us to be CQC compliant, we need X, Y, and Z documents. So they will generally give you the checklist that you need, and you'll just go through it and send it over to them.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, for clarifying that.
No problem at all. Anyone else have got a question? We've got
So
Alexander.
usually this is my first time here.
And your line is not clear for me. I don't know if can you make out? I said,
It's his first time here. Welcome, brother.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the recruitment. What do you guys exactly do, and how do you get into this field?
okay, I didn't hear the question.
Can you hear me now?
Did anyone else hear it? Was it just mine?
I think it's your internet. It's his internet.
Okay, can you ask the question again, please?
Can you hear me now?
Okay, your mic is, it's a bit fuzzy.
Right. Give me a sec.
So he's new into recruitment?
It's his first time here on
Okay.
the call, basically.
Cool. Well, you're very welcome to the call, Amin. And the purpose of this calls we hold every week is just if you're interested in getting into recruitment, or you're already started your recruitment journey and you've got any questions or you need kind of advice, myself and Asad hold weekly calls on Thursdays at 8 p.m. and where we go through any questions that you have. Feel free to ask.
I did have one about CRM integration, and is there a particular one? Is there one particular one to use for recruitment, or can that be any one you're comfortable with based on your start budget?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's a must go to CRM. It really depends on your budget and also the niche that you're doing. If you're doing a temporary contracting recruitment, then you may want to go for a CRM that integrates contract and has a diary where you can sort of keep up with your contractors that are working. If you're doing permanent recruitment, then you may want to go for a more tailored towards permanent. And so it really depends on the niche that you're doing. And after that also depends on the budget that you have. If you're fairly new and you're early stages and haven't made a lot of money in recruitment yet, I'll say just go for a very simple CRM that does the job and that holds together your data, so your clients, your candidates, and also go for one that has options to do mailing. So you can send like a mailing list out as well.
Okay. And I've heard this term top biller. Can you just define, Ahmed, what that is and what do you call someone who's a top biller in terms of OT? And can all potential recruitment consultants that you might hire on a particular area or a particular desk or a particular region, do they have to be salaried?
So are you talking about recruiters that I hire working in my company, or?
Yeah, recruiters that you hire in your company.
So the recruiters I hire at my company are all on a salary, yes.
Okay, and when you hear the term top biller, is that someone that's invoicing the most? What
Yes.
does that mean? What does that? Is
So
that
top biller? So go on, brother, finish.
No, that's it. I've finished.
Yeah. Okay. So top biller, it just refers to the highest invoicer, the one who makes the most money in the company. What you consider a top biller is quite subjective. So, for example, when I was working at the last healthcare company, I was making about £60,000 a month for the company. At that time, I was deemed as a top biller. After I left, I had a year or so later, the market was crazy high, it rocketed, and the guys were making £120,000 to £150,000 a month. So then, I wouldn't be considered top biller anymore with those figures. So it's fairly subjective. But a good recruit, I would say, makes about £15,000 a month after like the first year or so, or year and a half, close to 2 years. And that was the benchmark that we had. But saying that, honestly, if you're doing your own thing, so if you're running your own business, I would say just go for a figure that makes you happy and content. Don't chase like a number where, I need to be considered a top biller until I hit £15,000 or £20,000. Whatever suits your lifestyle, just and gives you the contentment. I would just say just aim for that, to be honest.
Thank you, Ahmed, for that. There's some more questions from 3 people in the chat that have just come through now.
Asad, do you mind reading?
Yeah, this is from Lamine, who's having mic problems. He said, I want to know what you guys actually do and how does one get into recruitment?
Okay. So what we do is, myself, I run a recruitment agency in the healthcare space. Kind of gave a bit of my background a few minutes ago, but yeah, I've been in recruitment for 10 years, running my own company for 4 years in the healthcare space. And what I do outside of recruitment is just, I guess, we do like a weekly recruitment course where we give advice for anyone who wants to get into recruitment. Getting into recruitment is fairly easy. Honestly, I stumbled across recruitment. Before recruitment, I was doing like random jobs, like working in a warehouse, being a postman for a couple of days or so. Yeah, just random different jobs. So that you don't really need a qualification to get into recruitment. The barrier to enter recruitment is very low. All you need to be able to do is you need to be able to be a good salesman. And in order to be a good salesman, you need to know your product. And that's what it is. And once you learn your product and you've been in the industry for so long, you know exactly what you're talking about, how to sell your candidate, how to sell a vacancy to the candidate. And yeah, that's all it requires really Just the startup cost is very low. All it needs is a telephone line, which costs you about £10 a month, a laptop, and just a basic website, and you're good to go. All you need is just get on the phones, speak to clients, let them know that you're in the industry, you've got candidates available right away for interviews, and they don't know whether you're working from your bedroom, from your kitchen. As far as they're concerned, you've got a professional website, you've got a professional number, you've got a professional email address. You're just a firm on Canary Wharf or anywhere else. And that's how I started, to be fair. I started in my kitchen.
Okay, next question is, how do you go on about PSL, preferred supply list?
How to get onto a PSL. So getting onto a PSL really depends on the client. Some of them is fairly straightforward. Some of them will say to you, okay, for us to consider you joining our PSL, we need to know what is your turnover, how many candidates do you have in that area that we're recruiting for? Are you a specialist in that field? And they will ask you just for a few documents, and then they'll let you join it. Others won't let you join the PSL. They only open the PSL once every 2 years. Some open their PSL once every 4 years. You've got to bid for it, and if you get approved, you join. So it really depends on your client. But once you're on a PSL, good thing is you stay on it and you get to work on, you don't need to worry about business development, looking for work. You got regular work coming in.
I'll just be back in a few minutes. You got one more question. Would you recommend starting off in the healthcare niche?
Would I recommend starting a healthcare niche? And yes and no. I mean, yes, healthcare is always one of those industries where it's going to be busy no matter what time of the year. There's always people going to be ill. So hospitals are always full. The clinics are always full. You will always need healthcare staff. And as you all know, NHS, there's a huge shortage. So that's a no-brainer. But do you have to kind of start in a healthcare niche? No. So if, for example, if you're a specialist, let's say you're an IT consultant or you're an IT web developer, or, I don't know, you've got your interest in other fields and you know exactly the jargon, you know the terms and the clients that you worked with in the past, then I would say try to go in the field that you're in and see if you can penetrate it. And if you can't, of course, healthcare it's a lucrative space. There is a lot of competition in healthcare, but to be fair, everyone's eating. I'm hearing new agencies always coming up every single day, and everyone's busy, to be fair, because there's no agency that can keep up with all the demand. Like the amount of shifts that we get, sometimes we get one client will give you 30, 40 shifts. And we can't keep up with it. So and we can't fill it. Another agency can't fill it. So a lot of shifts in the NHS go unfilled because no one can fill it. So it's a huge shortage.